The cold vacuum of space has a sound. Anyone who tells you different has never been left to die in it. My HUD flickered. Oxygen warning blinking, an angry red countdown. 17 minutes remaining. The stars around me were in different points of light, distant and cold, as the eyes of commanders who had sent us here. My EVA suit was shredded, punctured in 13 places from enemy fire, as our drop pods scattered across Zarin 4's upper atmosphere. The quarantine death world loomed below, a poisonous green marble that had swallowed the rest of my squad. I was Sergeant D, the lone survivor of a drop squad, drifting without hope above a planet no human was meant to touch. My comms had gone silent hours ago. Command had abandoned us, abandoned me, to the void. The silence of space isn't truly silent when you're dying in it. There's the hiss of your dwindling oxygen, the thunderous pounding of your own heartbeat, the whisper of blood rushing in your ears, growing louder as your body realizes it's dying. Then, impossibly, the hiss transformed. What began as the sound of my own demise became a vibration, a tremor, a roar. Through the endless black, a massive shape eclipsed the distant sun. The sleek, predatory silhouette of a Terran warship, unmistakable against the stars. My emergency beacon, broadcasting on a frequency I'd been told was defunct, had been heard. The HWS Vengeance locked onto my position, the vibration building to a bone-rattling intensity as its retrieval bay opened like the maw of some massive spaceborne leviathan. Tractor beams engaged, and I felt the gentle pull as despair transformed into something new. Not hope, not relief. Vengeance. Sergeant D, can you hear me? A voice pierced the fog of semi-consciousness. Female. Authoritative. Medical. Increased stimulant dosage. I need him lucid. My eyes cracked open to blinding white light. Medical bay. The antiseptic smell burned my nostrils after hours of recycled suit air. Tubes and wires connected me to machines that beeped and whirred. A stern-faced woman with captain's insignia stood at the foot of my bed. "Captain Grant," I croaked, recognizing her from mission briefs. "My squad. Dead." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "All 23 of them. You're the only survivor of the Zarin 4 reconnaissance." She checked something on a data pad. "Do you remember what happened?" Flashes of memory. Our drop pods separating too early. Communication systems failing simultaneously. Enemy fire appearing from nowhere, as if they'd been waiting. The screams of my team cutting off one by one. "We were set up," I said. Captain Grant's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "Explain." "The enemy knew exactly where we'd drop. Our comms failed all at once. Command frequencies went dead before we even hit atmosphere." I tried to sit up, wincing as pain lanced through my chest. "Someone wanted us to die." "Interesting theory." She tapped something on her data pad. "Especially since, officially, your mission never happened." The medical bay door slid open, and 2 security officers entered. Captain Grant dismissed them with a curt nod. "This conversation is not happening either," she continued once we were alone. "But I need to know, if what you're saying is true, what would you do about it?" I met her gaze. "Whatever it takes." Something like approval crossed her face. "Sergeant D, I'm about to tell you something that could get us both executed for treason." She lowered her voice. "High Command sacrificed your squad to collect data on enemy response patterns at Zarin 4. They needed real soldiers, real deaths, to make the data valuable. The machines monitoring my vitals beeped in alarm as my heart rate spiked. This isn't the first time," she continued. "There have been others, classified missions where soldiers were expendable variables in their equations." "Why tell me this?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Because the Vengeance wasn't supposed to be in that sector. We intercepted your beacon by accident." Her eyes hardened. "And because I need to know if you're the kind of soldier who follows orders, or the kind who demands justice." I thought of my squad, of the faces I'd seen daily for 3 years, now cold and lifeless on a quarantined planet, of the families who would receive empty caskets and redacted reports. Justice, I said. The word tasted like blood and fire on my tongue. Captain Grant nodded. Then, listen carefully. You're being promoted to Sergeant First Class. Officially, you'll be leading a special reconnaissance unit called Bravo. Unofficially, you'll be gathering evidence of High Command's betrayal, not just of your squad, but dozens of others. And then, her smile was cold as the vacuum that had nearly claimed me. And then we burn it all down. 2 weeks later, I stood before the men and women who would become my new squad. They looked like me, hollow-eyed, their faces etched with the same rage that fueled my every waking moment. Survivors, all of them, of missions that officially never happened. I won't lie to you, I said, pacing before them in the Vengeance's secure briefing room. What we're doing is treason. If we're caught, the best we can hope for is a quick execution. Rhett, a communications specialist with a shock of red hair that had earned him the nickname Red, leaned forward. Beats what they had planned for us, Sarge. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled soldiers. Our first target is a weather satellite at Kepler 6, I continued, bringing up the holographic display. Captain Grant's intelligence suggests it's actually a relay station that stores backup copies of all classified mission logs, including the real data on our sacrifice squads. Vic, a demolitions expert with burn scars covering half her face, studied the rotating hologram. Security? Minimal. They're not expecting anyone to know it exists, much less attack it. And after we take it? This from Kowalski, a sniper whose hands never seemed to stop trembling until he had a rifle in them. We broadcast everything. Every file. Every log. Every name of every soldier they left to die. We send it system-wide. I looked at each of their faces. This isn't just about vengeance. It's about truth. The room fell silent as they absorbed the magnitude of what I was proposing. One more thing, I added. Intelligence suggests one of our own might still be alive. Corporal Hale, from Echo Squad, reportedly survived their mission to Theta 9. Instead of bringing her home, Command transferred her to a research facility. We're going to find out why and get her back. Red raised an eyebrow. You're telling me we're mounting a rescue on top of everything else? We leave no one behind, I said firmly. Not anymore. The unspoken words hung in the air. Not like they left us. When do we start? Asked Vic, her scarred face breaking into a grim smile. Now. The Kepler 6 operation went more smoothly than any of us dared hope. Red sliced into their communications, while Vic's carefully placed charges created a diversion on the opposite side of the satellite. My team infiltrated through maintenance shafts that hadn't seen human presence in years. The central data core was exactly where Captain Grant's intelligence had indicated. While Red worked to copy the files, I stood watch, feeling a strange sense of calm. This was just the beginning. Holy shit, Red whispered, his fingers flying over the interface. Sarge, you need to see this. I moved to his side, scanning the data scrolling across his screen. Not just logs of our missions, but hundreds more. Thousands of names, dates, locations, all marked with the same designation, expended assets. They've been doing this for years, Red's voice cracked. Not just frontline missions, medical testing, psychological experimentation. There's a whole section on something called Project Revenant. Download everything, I ordered, my voice steadier than I felt. Every last byte. When we returned to the Vengeance, Captain Grant was waiting in the hangar bay, her face unreadable as always. Did you get it? She asked without preamble. I handed her the data core. All of it. But there's more than we thought. Much more. She nodded grimly. I suspected as much. My contacts in intelligence have been feeding me fragments for months, But this, she held up the core. This changes everything. When do we broadcast? Not yet. Her eyes met mine. First, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. And we need to find Corporal Hale. According to these files, she's the key to something called Project Ascendant. The facility on Theta 9 was buried beneath the surface of a barren moon. Unlike the satellite, this place was heavily guarded. Automated defense systems, patrol drones, and a contingent of elite security forces. "They're not taking chances," Red muttered as we huddled in the shadow of our stealth shuttle, studying the facility's schematics. "Whatever they're doing to Hale in there, they don't want anyone finding out." "Change of plans," I said after a moment's consideration. "Vic, I want you to create a distraction at the main power generator. Make it look like a catastrophic failure, not an attack." She grinned. "One meltdown, coming right up." "Kowalski, find a sniper position with line of sight to the emergency evac area. When they start moving personnel out, identify high-value targets, but hold your fire unless I give the order." He nodded, already mentally calculating trajectories and wind patterns. "Red, you're with me. We'll use the chaos to access the lower levels where they're keeping Hale." The plan worked, mostly. Vic's explosion took out not just the power generator, but half the facility's western section. Alarms blared as personnel rushed to emergency protocols. Exactly as we'd predicted. Red and I, wearing stolen security uniforms, moved through the panicked crowds toward the secure elevator that would take us to the detention level. A guard stopped us at the checkpoint, his eyes narrowing as he scanned our fake credentials. "You're not authorized for level Omega," he began, reaching for his sidearm. I moved faster, driving my combat knife up under his ribcage before he could raise the alarm. We dragged his body into a storage closet and took his access card. Level Omega was a nightmare made real. The sterile corridor opened onto a series of observation rooms, each containing something that had once been human. Some were hooked to machines that pumped unknown substances into their veins. Others lay strapped to tables, their bodies grotesquely altered. "What the hell are they doing down here?" Red whispered, his face pale. I checked the room designations against the intel we'd gathered. Hale should be in Chamber 12. We found her strapped to a vertical examination frame. Unconscious, but alive. Unlike the others, she still looked human, except for the metallic implants visible beneath her skin, tracing patterns along her veins like silver rivers. "Corporal Hale," I said softly, releasing her restraints. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then widening in recognition. "Sergeant D, am I hallucinating again?" "Not this time. We're getting you out of here." She stumbled as her feet touched the floor, leaning heavily against me. "You don't understand. They put something in me. Something they found on Zarin 4. A chill ran down my spine. "What are you talking about?" "Project Ascendant." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They're waking something up. Sergeant. Something old. Something that was there before us." Before I could question her further, an alarm blared, different from the evacuation alert. "They've discovered the guard," Red warned, checking his tactical display. "We need to move, now." We half-carried Hale toward the emergency shaft we'd mapped as our exit route. Behind us, the sound of boots on metal flooring grew louder. "Wait," Hale gasped as we passed another chamber. "We can't leave them." Inside were rows of stasis pods, each containing what appeared to be a hybrid, part human, part something else. Their skin had a strange, bluish tint, and their limbs were elongated beyond normal human proportions. "What are they?" I asked, unable to look away. "Failed experiments. Zern human hybrids." Hale's voice trembled. "They used my DNA, combined with samples from Zarin 4. The approaching security team was seconds away. "Red, set the containment protocols to fail," I ordered. "We're taking Hale, but we're not leaving these things alive." He nodded grimly, fingers dancing across the control panel until warning lights bathed the corridor in crimson. Stasis field destabilizing. They'll be dead within minutes. We barely made it to the emergency shaft before the first security team rounded the corner, opening fire as we pulled ourselves up into the narrow tunnel. Vic was waiting at the rendezvous point, her face streaked with soot and blood. "Took you long enough," she grunted, helping us haul Hale into the stealth shuttle. "Kowalski's already aboard." As our shuttle broke, Theta 9's weak gravity, I watched the facility receding below us, secondary explosions blooming across its surface as Vic's charges continued their destructive work. Hale sat huddled in a corner, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to hold something in. "They'll know it was you," she said quietly. "They'll come for all of us now." "Let them come," I replied. "We're just getting started." Back aboard the Vengeance, Captain Grant listened in grim silence as Hale recounted what had been done to her. The experiments, the injections, the voices she sometimes heard that weren't her own. "They said I was the first successful integration," Hale explained, her voice hollow. "The others rejected the Zern genetic material, but somehow I didn't. They kept talking about resonance patterns and ascendant compatibility." Grant exchanged a look with me. "This matches what we found in the Kepler-6 data. Project Ascendant appears to be focused on creating human-alien hybrids, but the purpose isn't clear." "It's a weapon," Hale said with certainty. "They want soldiers who can interface with Zern technology, who can hear them, understand them, become them." "Why?" I asked. "We've been fighting the Zern for decades. Why try to become what we're trying to destroy?" "Because they're afraid." Hale's eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something alien in their depths. "There's something else out there. Something worse." Red cleared his throat. "Speaking of worse, I've been analyzing the rest of the Kepler data. Found something about a place called Corin 12, an asteroid facility where they're working on something called Project Revenant." "Revenant?" The word struck a chord in my memory. "Like the dead returning." "Exactly like that," Red confirmed. "They're taking DNA from fallen soldiers and creating copies. Perfect replicas with all their combat skills intact, but none of their humanity. No conscience, no hesitation, no fear." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. An army of the dead, made to fight without question. "That's our next target," I decided. "We hit Corin 12, destroy their cloning facility, and get proof of what they're doing." Captain Grant nodded slowly. "This goes deeper than we imagined. If High Command is creating these weapons, these abominations, we need to know why. What enemy could be so terrible that they'd resort to this?" Hale's voice was barely a whisper. "They call it Eidolon." Corin 12 was a fortress disguised as a mining operation. The asteroid had been hollowed out, its interior transformed into a massive laboratory complex. Unlike Theta 9, this facility wasn't hiding its security. Multiple patrol ships circled the asteroid, and automated defense platforms dotted its cratered surface. "Frontal assault would be suicide," Kowalski observed, as we studied the tactical display. "Even with the Vengeance's firepower backing us up." I nodded. "We need another way in." Red pointed to a section of the schematic. "Supply ships dock here every 48 hours. If we could impersonate one—" "Too risky," Vic countered. "They'll scan for verification codes, crew manifests, cargo details. Not if they're distracted." A plan was forming in my mind. "Captain, could the Vengeance engage those patrol ships? Not to destroy them, just keep them occupied." Grant considered this. "A cat-and-mouse game in the asteroid field? Doable. But you'd still need a way onto the facility." I smiled grimly. "That's where our newest team member comes in." All eyes turned to Hale, who had been silent during our planning session. The silver traces beneath her skin seemed to pulse in the dim light of the tactical room. "They're expecting a prisoner transport today," I explained. "High-value subjects for their experiments. We intercept it and deliver our own package instead. Me, Hale said softly. You want to send me back in? Only as far as the docking bay, I assured her. Once inside, you help us bypass security, and we move on the cloning facility together. She was silent for a long moment. I'll do it. But there's something else you should know. Her hand moved to her chest, where the largest concentration of metallic implants formed a starburst pattern over her heart. I can feel them. The revenants. They're awake in there, waiting. The plan worked with mechanical precision. The Vengeance drew away the patrol ships with a series of feints and electronic countermeasures. Our team, disguised as a security detail transporting Hale, docked at the facility without incident. Prisoner transfer from Theta 9, I told the docking officer, keeping my face shadowed beneath my helmet. Priority Alpha? He barely glanced at our forged documents before waving us through. Bay 3. Medical team is standing by. As soon as we cleared the checkpoint, Hale guided us toward the central laboratory. The facility was massive, its corridors stretching for kilometers through the hollowed asteroid. Guards patrolled at regular intervals, but they paid little attention to a prisoner transport. Such sights were common here. Something's wrong, Hale whispered as we neared the central chamber. It's too quiet. They should have dozens of technicians working at this hour. She was right. The laboratories we passed were empty. Equipment left running, but no personnel in sight. Could they know we're coming? Vic asked, her hand moving to her sidearm. No. Hale shook her head. They're somewhere else. Gathered. Watching. A chill ran down my spine. Watching what? The answer came as we rounded the final corner to the central chamber. A vast, cathedral-like space dominated by rows of cylindrical tanks. Each tank contained a floating human form, connected to life support systems by a web of tubes and wires. But it wasn't the tanks that stopped us in our tracks. It was what stood in the center of the room, a perfect copy of myself, addressing a gathered crowd of scientists and military officers. Superior in every way to the original, my doppelganger was saying, its voice an uncanny match for my own. Strength enhanced by 15%, reaction time improved by 22%, and most importantly, absolute loyalty to the mission. That's not possible, Red breathed beside me. How did they get your DNA? The realization hit me like a physical blow. Zarin 4. They recovered my squad's bodies, used their DNA to create... I gestured at the tanks around us. This. Without warning, Hale clutched her head, a small cry escaping her lips. They know we're here, she gasped. The Alpha clone, it can sense me. As if on cue, my duplicate stopped mid-sentence, its head turning slowly toward our position behind the chamber's massive support column. We have intruders, it announced, voice eerily calm. Security Protocol 7. Alarms blared as armed guards moved to seal the exits. The scientists scattered, some rushing to secure computer terminals, others fleeing toward emergency shelters. New plan, I said grimly, drawing my weapon. Vic, set charges on those tanks. Red, download everything you can from their system. Kowalski, find us an exit route. Hale. I hesitated, seeing the pain etched on her face. Stay with me. What followed was chaos. Gunfire erupted across the chamber as we broke cover, each of us moving toward our assigned objectives. Guards fell to Kowalski's precise shots, while Vic darted between the clone tanks, planting explosive charges with practiced efficiency. I headed straight for my duplicate, a strange fury building in my chest. It watched my approach with clinical interest, making no move to flee or draw a weapon. Sergeant D, it said when I was close enough to hear. The original. How disappointing. What are you? I demanded, keeping my pulse rifle trained on its chest. I am you. Improved. It smiled. The expression wrong somehow. Too perfect. Too calculated. The first of a new generation of soldiers. ones who won't question orders or demand answers. You're an abomination. I am the future. Its smile widened. And you are obsolete. It moved with impossible speed, crossing the distance between us before I could fire. Its fist connected with my chest, sending me sprawling across the laboratory floor. My armor absorbed most of the impact, but the strength behind the blow was inhuman. The clone stalked toward me as I scrambled to my feet. They studied your combat patterns from Zarin 4, it said conversationally. Every move you made, every decision. I know exactly how you fight. Then, you should know I don't fight fair. I triggered the small EMP device in my palm, a precaution Red had insisted on after learning about the revenants. The clone staggered, its movements suddenly jerky and uncoordinated. Whatever cybernetic enhancements they'd given it were temporarily disrupted. I didn't waste the advantage, launching myself forward and driving my combat knife into its throat. The blade met resistance, reinforced cartilage or some synthetic substitute, but penetrated with enough force to send dark blood spraying across both of us. The clone's eyes widened in something like surprise. They didn't program this scenario, it gurgled, blood bubbling from its lips. That's the difference between us, I said, twisting the knife. I'm not programmed. As it collapsed, I turned to find the rest of my team regrouping near the main data core. Red was downloading files while Vic finished setting her charges. Kowalski provided covering fire from an elevated position, keeping the remaining security forces pinned down. Hale stood before one of the clone tanks, her hand pressed against the glass, face contorted in a mixture of horror and fascination. Hale, we need to move, I called, making my way toward her. She didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the floating figure inside, a young woman who could have been her twin, save for the blue-tinged skin and elongated limbs. They were going to replace me with her, Hale whispered as I reached her side. A perfect hybrid, the next stage. Not anymore. I gently pulled her away from the tank. Vic's charges will destroy all of this. There won't be anything left to study or replicate. Red jogged over, his expression grim. Got the data, but you're not going to like what I found. This facility is connected to something called Judgment Core, a hidden command node behind a dwarf star in the Cygnus sector. That's where all the orders come from, including the ones that sent your squad to die. And that's where we're going next, I decided. Vic joined us, detonator in hand. Charges set. This place will be vapor in 5 minutes. Then let's not be here when it happens. We fought our way back to the docking bay, the facility's remaining security forces in disarray without central command. As our shuttle broke free of the asteroid, Vic triggered the detonator. The explosion blossomed behind us, silent in the vacuum, but beautiful in its destruction. Hale watched through the viewport, her expression unreadable. It won't be enough, she said softly. Corin 12 was just one facility. There are others, and Eidolon is still out there, waiting. What exactly is Eidolon? I asked. You keep mentioning it, but I need to know what we're facing. She turned to me, the silver beneath her skin catching the light from distant stars. Not what. Who? An entity far older than humanity. The Zern found it frozen in deep space and brought it back, thinking it was technology they could use against us. They were wrong. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It used them instead. And now it's using us. Using us how? Project Ascendant. Project Revenant. They're not weapons against the Zern. They're preparations. Vessels being created for Eidolon to inhabit. An army of bodies for a being that exists beyond physical form. The implications chilled me to the bone. And High Command knows this. Some do. Others are already under its influence, whether they realize it or not. Her eyes met mine, resolute despite her fear. That's why we have to stop it. Why we have to expose everything. The Judgment Core facility was hidden, where no one would think to look, in the shadow of a dying dwarf star, its radiation masking the command node from conventional scans. The station was small, but heavily fortified, designed to be defensible against any external threat. What its designers hadn't anticipated was an attack from a ship bearing proper Imperial authentication codes. Codes Captain Grant had extracted from the Corin 12 data. "They're hailing us," Red reported as the Vengeance approached the station. Grant nodded. "Put it through." A stern-faced officer appeared on the view screen. "HWS Vengeance, you are not scheduled for this sector. State your business." "Emergency Protocol 97 Alpha," Grant replied smoothly. "Direct orders from Fleet Command. Authentication code Tango Whiskey 069. The officer frowned, clearly suspicious, but unable to dispute the high-level code. "Transmitting docking instructions. Be advised that all personnel will be subject to security screening upon arrival." The transmission ended, and Grant turned to our assembled team. "They're suspicious, but they'll let us dock. That gets us inside, but we'll be walking into a trap." "Good," I said. "Let them think they have us cornered. Meanwhile, Hale and I will access their central server core." Hale had been quiet during the planning, but now she looked up sharply. "You want me to interface with their systems?" It wasn't a question. We both knew what I was asking. For her to use the alien technology embedded in her body. The very thing that had been forced upon her at Theta 9. "Only if you're willing," I said. "We need to access everything, every file, every order, every name involved in these projects. Then we broadcast it all, system-wide." She took a deep breath. "I'll do it. But there's a risk. If Eidolon has influence here, it might sense me when I connect." "We'll deal with that if it happens," I promised. "For now, let's focus on getting to the server core." The trap, when it sprung, was almost elegant in its simplicity. We were separated upon docking. Captain Grant and the visible members of our team escorted to security processing, while Hale and I remained hidden in a modified cargo container, waiting for Red's signal. The signal came not as the electronic pulse we expected, but as the sudden wail of emergency sirens. Grant and the others had created their diversion. "Now," I whispered, opening the container. We moved through maintenance corridors, following the station schematics Red had downloaded. The server core was 3 levels down, in the heart of the station. A heavily shielded room designed to survive even if the rest of the facility was destroyed. As we reached the access corridor, a single figure stood blocking our path. A man in an admiral's uniform, his posture rigid, hands clasped behind his back. "Sergeant D," he said calmly, "and Subject Theta 17. How predictable." I raised my weapon. "Admiral Varric, the man who sent my squad to die." He smiled thinly. "One of many strategic deployments. Your team's sacrifice provided valuable data on Zern defense patterns." "They were people," I growled, "not data points." "They were soldiers," he corrected. "As are you. Following orders is what soldiers do." "Not anymore." I stepped forward, keeping my rifle trained on his chest. "Step aside, Admiral. We're accessing that server core and exposing everything. Project Revenant, Project Ascendant, and whatever Eidolon really is." At the mention of Eidolon, something changed in Varric's eyes, a flicker of something alien and cold. "You understand nothing," he said, his voice suddenly different, deeper, resonating unnaturally. "Eidolon is salvation, the only defense against what lies beyond." Beside me, Hale stiffened. "It's in him," she whispered. "Eidolon is speaking through him." Varric's smile widened, becoming something inhuman. "Clever little vessel. Yes, I speak through this limited form, as I will soon speak through millions. Your species faces extinction, yet you fight the very thing that offers survival. By turning us into puppets?" I kept my weapon steady, though every instinct screamed to fire. "By elevating you." The vessels created at Corin 12 and Theta 9 are merely the beginning, imperfect prototypes for the final integration. Varric's body moved with strange, fluid grace as he approached. You cannot stop what has already begun. Watch us, I fired, the pulse round striking Varric squarely in the chest. He staggered back a step, then straightened, looking down at the charred hole in his uniform with mild curiosity. Interesting. This body feels pain, yet I find it irrelevant. Before I could fire again, Hale pushed past me, her hands outstretched toward Varric. The silver implants beneath her skin glowed with an unearthly light. I hear you, she said, her voice taking on the same resonant quality as Varric's. I've always heard you, but you're wrong about us. Varric's expression shifted to one of surprise, then calculation. You are the successful integration, the one who accepted the gift without losing her identity. Join us willingly, and your consciousness will remain intact when the ascension comes. I'd rather die human. Hale lunged forward, her glowing hands grasping Varric's face. What happened next defied explanation. Where they touched, light erupted, not the silver glow of Hale's implants, but something brighter, harsher. Varric screamed, a sound no human throat should produce, as his skin began to ripple and shift. Go! Hale shouted to me, her voice strained. I can hold it, but not for long. Get to the server core. I hesitated, unwilling to leave her. Go, she repeated. This is what I was made for, what they created me to do without knowing it. I can contain Eidolon, at least a part of it, long enough for you to finish this. With a final look at her determined face, I ran for the server core. The massive door yielded to the override codes Red had extracted, revealing a cavernous room dominated by the central data stack, a towering pillar of crystalline storage matrices. I worked quickly, connecting the broadcast module we'd prepared. Red had designed it to be simple. One activation, and every file, every record, every damning piece of evidence would be transmitted simultaneously across all frequencies, to every corner of the Empire. As I activated the final sequence, a violent tremor shook the station. Emergency lights flashed, and the station's AI announced evacuation protocols. Whatever was happening between Hale and Varric, between Hale and Eidolon, was threatening the structural integrity of the entire facility. I sprinted back toward them, arriving to find Hale standing alone. Varric's body crumpled at her feet. The silver beneath her skin had spread, covering most of her visible flesh in intricate, swirling patterns. It's done, I told her. The broadcast is active. Everyone will know everything. She turned to me, her eyes glowing with the same silver light as her skin. It's not enough, she said. Her voice oddly doubled, as if two people were speaking in unison. I've contained a fragment of Eidolon, but the rest is still out there. It has other vessels, other agents, and it knows we're coming for it now. Then we'll finish this, I promised. Together. She shook her head sadly. Not together. I can't leave the station. Sergeant. The fragment I've trapped will break free if I do. I need to stay, to ensure it's destroyed when this place goes down. I'm not leaving you behind. You have to. Her hand, now entirely silver, reached out to touch my face. The Empire is about to tear itself apart with the truth you've unleashed. The remaining fragments of Eidolon will use that chaos to accelerate their plans. You need to be there to stop them. Another violent tremor shook the station, more urgent this time. Go, she said softly. Finish what we started. I wanted to argue, to find another way, but the resolve in her eyes told me there was none. With a final nod, I ran for the evacuation pods, the station collapsing around me. The broadcast changed everything, just as we'd planned. Across the Empire, citizens and soldiers alike reacted with horror and rage to the revelations. Uprisings erupted on a dozen worlds. Military units mutinied, refusing orders from commanders implicated in the files. The carefully constructed facade of imperial unity shattered overnight. Aboard the Vengeance, we monitored the chaos spreading across known space. Captain Grant had established contact with other ship captains who shared our outrage, forming the nucleus of what was already being called the Ghost Fleet, vessels that had broken from Imperial command to pursue their own justice. "It's working," Red said, scanning the incoming reports. "The Empire's tearing itself apart from within." "But that might be exactly what Eidolon wants," I cautioned. "Division, chaos, humanity fighting itself instead of uniting against the real threat." Grant nodded grimly. "I've been thinking the same thing. And there's this." She pulled up a scrambled transmission our systems had intercepted. "It's heavily encrypted, but we've managed to isolate fragments." The message was disjointed, filled with static, but certain phrases stood out. Project Ascendant compromised. Eidolon fragments active. Primary containment at Erebus depth. Prevent full manifestation at all costs. "Erebus depth," I repeated. "What is that?" "A research outpost in uncharted space," Grant explained. "Officially, it doesn't exist. But my intelligence contacts have mentioned it as the site of the Empire's most classified projects. That's where we'll find Eidolon," I said with certainty. "Or what's left of it after Hale contained part of it at Judgment Corps. If we're going after it, we'll need a weapon," Red pointed out. "Conventional arms didn't even slow down Varric when he was possessed." Grant's expression turned thoughtful. "There might be something. During my time in special projects, I heard rumors about a prototype quantum destabilizer, a weapon designed to disrupt matter at a fundamental level. It was deemed too dangerous for deployment, but a working model was supposedly stored at Erebus depth. A weapon that powerful could destroy Eidolon, I considered, or at least its physical manifestation. Or it could tear a hole in reality itself, Grant cautioned. The scientists who developed it warned of cascade effects that could extend beyond the target. I thought of Hale, sacrificing herself to contain just a fragment of the entity, of my squad, abandoned on Zarin 4, of the countless other soldiers who had been betrayed by the Empire they served. "Some risks are worth taking," I said finally. "Set course for Erebus depth." The journey to Erebus depth took us beyond the boundaries of charted space, into a region where the stars themselves seemed dimmer, more distant. Navigation systems faltered. Communications grew unreliable. It was as if reality itself was thinner here, more malleable. When we finally located the outpost, it bore little resemblance to any Imperial facility we'd encountered. The structure hung suspended in the void, its architecture defying conventional design, angles that seemed to bend in impossible ways, surfaces that appeared solid one moment and translucent the next. "That's not human construction," Vic observed as we approached in our stealth shuttle. "At least, not entirely." "Zern influence," I suggested, "or something older." Scans showed minimal life signs within the facility, a skeleton crew at most, suggesting the chaos spreading through the Empire had reached even this isolated outpost. Our infiltration was met with token resistance, quickly overcome. The few personnel we encountered seemed dazed, disoriented, as if sleepwalking through their duties. One scientist, when questioned at gunpoint, could only repeat the same phrase. "It's awake now. It sees us all." We moved deeper into the facility, following schematics downloaded from its weakly defended systems. The quantum destabilizer was housed in a secure vault at the outpost's core, surrounded by layers of protection both technological and seemingly mystical, symbols etched into the walls that hurt the eyes to look at directly. "This place gives me the creeps," Red muttered as he worked to bypass the vault's security measures. "It's like they built it to contain something more than just weapons." "Or to keep something out," I suggested, watching the strange symbols that seemed to shift when not directly observed. The vault door finally yielded with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, on a pedestal of some unknown material, rested what appeared to be a modified pulse rifle. Its design familiar, but augmented with components that glowed with an inner blue light. "That's it," Grant confirmed. "The quantum destabilizer. One prototype, never replicated because the scientists who designed it all went insane shortly after its completion." I approached the weapon carefully. It felt wrong somehow, as if it existed partially in some other dimension. When I lifted it from its pedestal, a vibration ran through my arms, a sensation like standing at the edge of an infinite abyss. "Now we find Eidolon," I said, the destabilizer humming with potential energy in my hands. We didn't have to search long. Beyond the vault lay a vast chamber, its dimensions seeming to shift and change as we entered. At its center floated what I can only describe as a tear in reality, a vertical rift through which something was emerging. It had no fixed form, shifting between states of matter like a dream-changing shape. One moment it appeared almost human. The next, it was a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes. Then, something geometric and impossible. The only constant was the sense of ancient intelligence and cold purpose it emanated. "Eidolon," I whispered, and the entity seemed to focus on me, its attention like a physical weight. "The vessel speaks our name," it said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "The one who destroyed our lesser fragment. You believe you have won a victory, but you have merely accelerated the inevitable." "What are you?" I demanded, the destabilizer growing heavier in my hands. "We are what comes before and after. We existed when your kind was still pond scum, and we will exist when your sun burns out." The entity rippled, taking on a form that resembled Admiral Varric, then Hale, then myself. "Your empire found us dormant and thought to use us as a weapon. Instead, we used them, creating perfect vessels like the one you call Hale, preparing for our full manifestation. The projects," Grant realized aloud, "Revenant, Ascendant, they were all about creating hosts for you." "Hosts, extensions, avatars." Eidolon's form shifted again, becoming something like a web of light connecting countless human silhouettes. "Your fractured empire fights itself, weakening the barriers between dimensions. Soon, we will spread to every mind, every body, uniting your species in perfect harmony." "As slaves," I said. "As components of a greater whole." The entity expanded, tendrils of light reaching toward us. "You need not fight. Join willingly, and your consciousness will remain intact within the collective." I raised the quantum destabilizer. "I'd rather die human." The same words Hale had spoken. As they left my lips, I felt a strange resonance, as if she were somehow present, her determination echoing through me. Eidolon sensed it too, its form recoiling slightly. "The female vessel. Her fragment still exists, merged with your consciousness. Interesting. Unexpected." I didn't waste time trying to understand. The destabilizer hummed as I activated it, its power building to a crescendo that made the air itself vibrate. "You cannot destroy us," Eidolon warned. "We exist across dimensions. What you see is merely an anchor point, a nexus." "Then I'll destroy the anchor," I fired. The weapon discharged not as a beam or a bullet, but as a wave of distortion that rippled through space itself. Where it struck Eidolon's manifestation, reality seemed to fold inward, creating a singularity that pulled at the entity's form. Eidolon screamed, a sound that existed not in air, but in the mind. A psychic howl of rage and pain. Its form began to collapse inward, drawn into the destabilizer's quantum rift. But as it was pulled apart, tendrils of its essence lashed out, one of them striking me directly. Pain, unlike anything I'd ever experienced, coursed through my body, as something alien tried to force its way into my consciousness. I heard Hale's voice, impossibly whispering in my mind, Hold on, fight it. I'll help you contain it. The silver implants that had been part of her began to manifest on my skin, spreading in the same intricate patterns I'd seen on her before she sacrificed herself. I understood then, somehow. The fragment of Eidolon she had contained had transferred to me in our final moments together, along with a piece of her consciousness. Together, Hale's fragment and I, we fought against Eidolon's invasion, forcing it back into the collapsing singularity. The quantum destabilizer grew hotter in my hands, its components beginning to melt and warp as reality itself buckled around us. "Get back to the shuttle," I shouted to Grant and the others. "This whole place is coming apart." "What about you?" Grant demanded, even as the chamber began to disintegrate around us. I looked down at my arms, now covered in silver patterns that pulsed with inner light. "I have to finish this, to make sure Eidolon is truly destroyed." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "It's in you now, isn't it? Like it was in Hale." "Part of it. But so is she." I managed a smile. "We can contain it together, long enough for the destabilizer to collapse this entire dimensional pocket. But I can't leave. It would break free if I did." Another sacrifice. Another soldier left behind. But this time, it was my choice. "Go," I urged them. "Tell everyone what happened here. Make sure they understand the threat, in case any fragments of Eidolon remain." Grant hesitated, then nodded sharply. "It's been an honor, Sergeant." "The honor was mine, Captain." As they retreated, I turned back to the swirling vortex that had once been Eidolon, the destabilizer's power now feeding directly into the rift, widening it, deepening it. Reality stretched and tore around me, the outpost breaking apart as the dimensional pocket began to collapse. I felt Eidolon's rage, its desperation as it realized its defeat. Felt Hale's presence too, a warm counterpoint to the alien coldness, helping me hold the fragment contained within my transformed body. As the final collapse began, I activated the emergency beacon on my combat suit, not as a call for rescue, but as a message, a warning, a testament. My final transmission echoed across the frequencies as Erebus depth and everything in it, including myself, was pulled into the quantum singularity. They left me to die and I came back. The Empire fractured in the aftermath. The Ghost Fleet scattered across the stars, carrying the truth to every world that would listen. Some systems declared independence, others formed new alliances. The old order, built on secrets and sacrifices, could not survive the light we had cast upon it. Captain Grant became Admiral Grant, leader of the reformed fleet, a coalition dedicated to transparency and the defense of humanity against threats both known and unknown. Red, Vic, and the other survivors of my team served as her core commanders. Reports occasionally reached them of anomalies in distant sectors, phenomena that might indicate Eidolon fragments still active, or perhaps new threats rising to fill the void. Each time, they responded with the lessons we had learned at such cost. No sacrifices without consent, no secrets without oversight, no power without accountability. As for me, Sergeant D, the soldier left to die in space, stories spread. Some claimed I had been consumed entirely, erased from existence by the quantum collapse. Others insisted I had somehow survived, transformed by my contact with Eidolon and Hale's consciousness, wandering the edges of known space like a ghost. The truth, perhaps, lies somewhere between, in the quantum uncertainty where dimensions meet, where what was destroyed might also be transformed. Sometimes, on the outermost colonies, settlers report seeing a figure watching from afar, human in shape, but with skin that catches starlight like burnished silver. It never approaches, never speaks, but those who glimpse it feel a strange sense of safety, as if guarded by something both human and more than human. A sentinel at the edge of reality, a wanderer between stars, A soldier who refused to stay dead. They left me to die and I came back. Not as I was. Not entirely human anymore. But still fighting. Still watching. Still remembering the cold void of space and the roar of a human warship that changed everything.